Okay, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this evening's edition of Conversations. I find this one to be very interesting. We are dealing with a very interesting subject, and we have very beautiful guests, just like last week was. And this particular one, just like last week we were talking about COVID-19 and technology. This week we're talking about COVID-19 and culture. And the question we're dealing with is progress or retardation of cultural heritage. It is our hope that our guests, actually our presenters, are going to do the best they can to share with us their views. Remember, this is not an academic forum, so people are free to explore themselves. They are free to make reference to academic spaces, but then they're also free to say what they think, to share their views. And after their presentations, participants will also be asked to make their comments, ask questions, and it's basically conversations, and we are sharing views. Now welcoming our first presenter, Victoria Chungu, director of the Choma Museum. Ms. Chitungu, you are welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. And let me correct you, I'm not director, I'm just a curator now at Choma.
Well, the thing is that, you have been director for so long, and in all honesty, I know this might not please the authorities. Yes, I shouldn't say that, but I'll always see you as my director because you have been my director.
Thank you for that.
Okay, so you have 7 minutes in which to make your presentation, and then after you, we're going to invite Chanda to also make his presentation. So your time starts now, is Chitungu.
Thank you, Gankhanani. Yes, a very interesting topic. I'll start looking at the positive first of all. How has it given progress to our identity and our culture? And I'll start by the history of pandemics in our society. I think we've had pandemics before, such as measles, smallpox, polio, and in all these, we looked to the West. And our medicines that form part of our identity were discouraged to be used. And we turned to the West, and the West, and I mean Europe, and these problems were successfully sorted out, and we trusted them. But then came HIV. When HIV/AIDS came into our society, and Zambia was one of those that was the hardest hit, we turned again to the West, very trusting, and thinking that the problem will be solved. But we were hard hit. I think we have never been hit so hard the way HIV has done. And it affected our families, the population decreased, the way of life, our economy, almost every sector of our lives changed. And we hope that this problem would be solved by Western medication. But as you know, up to now, we can't say HIV is over. And the devastation has never been forgotten. And we also say it hasn't gone away. That has come, and COVID, to say that COVID has come at the time that we still remember the effects of HIV. And we are still suffering from the effects of HIV, and HIV is not completely gone. So what COVID-19 has done to come at such a time is that we are no longer trusting the West. And we have decided to re-identify with ourselves, what I'm calling looking inside ourselves. And people from the word go have not been listening to Western prescription. They've decided to go their own way, and they've decided to look at the medicines that they've used before, such as Muleza, which is called Muludwe, Musokansoka, There are medicines like Kankalamba, Matolisa. So many of these have now come back. I don't know the last time I heard of Mleza, but this time it's a common word. It has come back. So we are really looking at ourselves, looking inside and re-identifying with ourselves and not the West. And we are thinking these are the things that are going to solve our problem. And also, we have also gone back to some of the activities, traditional activities that we had forgotten, such as Idiango. I think this is a Tonga word for a traditional cleansing place before you enter a homestead. We have words like Tuzekwe to refer to masks. Tuzekwe, traditionally, they are used for animals that are used for farming. So they are, you block their mouths so that they don't eat the crop. So now the masks are called Tuzekwe, and this word has become very common now. And those that are not, don't use cattle traditionally are learning new words now. And we have words like kugogolora. Kugogolora is a word that I never heard before, but it's coming back, and it means isolation. It's associated with the rights of isolation in childbirth, or when there's a disease, animal disease or human disease, and you have to isolate yourselves. These are the words that were used. There are words like nyawi nyawi. Nyawi nyawi is a cleansing medicine used in mealie meal, used to purify water. And there are some homestays that were made, where people don't live in enclosed houses like we are living now. Like around the Gwembe Valley, there's Ingazi, those houses where it's up on top, and it's just accommodates a few people. These houses are coming back. So I'm seeing ourselves re-identifying with ourselves, with the things that we used to do before, but also we are enriching our culture in that the words that we had forgotten are coming back into our vocabulary. So there is an aspect of progress. But then again, when you look very closely, there's also an aspect of retardation. And I'm seeing this because COVID-19 has also hit very hard on the core activities that we identify with tradition and culture, such as funeral gatherings, funeral rites, death rites, birth rites. People who tell you they are so modern and they don't associate with tradition. When it comes to death, birth, they normally come back. These are the things that at least they've kept on. But COVID-19 has hit hard on these same traditions. And now we cannot gather to mourn collectively like we normally do, the collective mourning. We are failing to do the death rites because you die in isolation. There are questions like, who closed my child's eyes when he died? Who closed my husband's eyes when he died? Because this is what is happening now. We are isolated from those that are sick. Then there are issues like Isamboli Amfa. How do you do that if you are not present when this person died? And without Isamboli Amfa, actually, mourning does not end, it doesn't close. So we are failing to have these things because of COVID-19. And as such, people have decided, they've made up their minds that, they are gone into denial. There is no COVID-19 because they want to keep their sick relatives at home. They don't want these people to be isolated so that they can perform these rites. They want to have the normal funerals. They want to have the normal birth rights activities. So they'll say this is not COVID, and we have seen it in the communications. You have seen people denying that they didn't die of COVID-19. Can we have a funeral gathering? There is no COVID-19 at my home. Just come, we do the birth rights. So this has led people to go into denial, and by going into denial, there is some retardation because now. The statistics actually in Zambia are showing that those that are dying at home, the statistics are increasing because people are keeping those that are sick. But again, even when people are saying this is not COVID-19, please come to this funeral, people are afraid to go and perform the funeral rites as they would have normally done in a normal traditional funeral. So it has
Victoria,
affected and retarded.
I'm giving you 2 more minutes. You have
traditions.
exhausted your 7 minutes, so I'm giving you just 2 minutes to wrap up.
Yeah, in fact, I'm wrapping up.
Okay, great.
So these negative effects on the core traditional activities has made us to, to be scared to perform the traditions that would have normally performed, but it has also made us to go into denial. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very, very much. I know you have a lot to talk about, but then we are limited in terms of timing. I think I'm very thankful. I'm not going to comment on that now. We'll straight away invite Chanda Penda to give his presentation. Chanda Penda, it's your turn now.
Thank you, Ganka. Can I upload a slide or something for?
Yes, please. You
okay.
can.
Let me just. And it says I'm unable to, so probably I'll just
try
look
again.
at it myself.
I've just worked on the settings to ensure that anyone can share.
Okay. Okay.
Yes, try again.
There it is. And thank you. So having looked at this this interaction as an informal discussion, I decided to just share my my experience, my personal story with COVID-19 in terms of lockdowns and having experienced COVID-19 on 3 different continents. And I'll just briefly look at that and just suit it into the discussion. So my personal story starts like this. A week before COVID-19 was announced officially to the whole world, I was in the US attending an EMS conference. And I remember that at that time, we could all travel freely around the world without any worries and restrictions. And as soon as I landed in Europe, the announcement came, and it took us all of us suddenly. And I remember being on a train one day, and an old man sneezed right in front of me, and how that experience tormented me for weeks to come, thinking that I'd caught COVID-19 because of that old man who sneezed in front of me. And whenever I felt a headache or some simple illness, I would think, this is it, I've caught COVID. And this was followed by emergency evacuation of myself and my colleagues from Vienna into Budapest, in which we went into 3 months lockdown and cut off from the rest of the world. And I will talk about that briefly. Then it was after that 3 months of imposed isolation, then I was able to travel back home and experience 14 days self-isolation at that time. And during this time of lockdown, I remember I faced a number of missed opportunities, such that I was unable to travel to a conference that I was scheduled to travel to in Istanbul because of the lockdown at that time. I was unable to visit a family in Moscow. I was unable to attend an EMS conference in Krakow. So it is like everything that I had lined up to do had come to a standstill because of this new pandemic that had hit the world. And I would like at this point to talk about some quick facts concerning COVID-19. One of them is that heritage is usually placed into the creative industry, and the creative industry thrives mostly on close physical interaction with the public. Prior to the outbreak of COVID-19, the creative industry was the world's fastest growing sector, especially in developing countries, which stood at 12%. COVID-19 brought about the closure of museums, the seizure of film production in some categories. Hotels and lodges nearly went out of business. Airlines lost businesses, and nations, including ours, suffered tremendous losses of revenue. Uh, bringing it down home, I remember that it was during this same time of COVID-19 that our kwacha shrank by about half of its value. And having been in the diaspora at that time, I had to suffer spending twice because I was using accounts from home. I had to suffer spending twice for the same services that I could have spent half of the amounts. Then we also faced cancellation of the Kuomboka ceremony, cancellation of Uksefia Pangwena, cancellation of Kulamba Kubwalo, and many other ceremonies. I think the last time I checked, we had about 80 traditional ceremonies in Zambia that are held annually, and COVID-19 just put a stop to all these activities. And maybe coming to the gains, the lockdown that I had experienced at my personal level rather, enabled me to write, to focus on writing my thesis and defending. And by God's grace, I was able to graduate. Other gains at macro level are that many institutions are maximizing the digital space for meetings and promotion of heritage. And then I would just like to cruise through the last segments. This is the conclusion part, is that heritage in any part of the world belongs to all humanity. For example, if we say Victoria Falls is our heritage, or Mosotunya, quite okay, as Zambians, we have that grip that this is our property, but it belongs to all humanity. And the lockdown
Chanda, Penda, are you there? I can't hear you. I don't know if there's a problem with the network where you are, or it's where I am.
travel
Chanda, we can barely hear you. Okay, I think we have a network problem there with Chanda. Okay, I don't know. I think we can just proceed into discussion. Do we have any comments? We can't get Chanda back. Yeah, I think there's a problem. Okay, so I think we can get into discussion. Well, a lot of issues have come out. And one thing I found interesting actually with Victoria is when she says we have gotten back to our traditional practices, you know, several things, and she says that this is progress. And actually, a lot of people would say that is backwardness. It's like, you know, it's retardation. So to me, that is a very interesting view, to say when we are going backwards, we're actually not retarding, but that's when we're progressing, because we're getting back to the starting point. So it's like we are resetting the system. So the system had collapsed, and all of a sudden we're talking about restarting, you know, everything. We have reset everything. So let's start afresh and probably find our feet. We probably lost everything. So I find it interesting when you say that. But then I think, let me allow people to make their comments. We have, I think, about 4 minutes remaining. So we'll ask people to just make very brief comments of about 30 to 45 seconds. I know that is not enough, but for, you know, in the interest of time, let's still hear what people have to say. So anyone, I can't see any hands up of those that want to speak.
Moyo.
Yes, yes. Mr. Chairman.
Just a comment. I think one interesting thing also, let me also recognize the fact that the presentation have been very interesting.
Okay.
One interesting thing that comes out also within this aspect of COVID is that Africa has gotten on the table, on the discussion table. Back in the days when things like HIV were being discussed and all that, it was all about the Western world. But now we are also part of the discussion when the issue of Madagascar, the issue of the vaccine, but also it has helped us to get back into the culture in terms of consumption. We're able to consume things that are locally produced. The case of Zambia, for instance, because culture is also blended within what we consume. So there's that aspect also that comes out. But since you said 30 seconds,
yes,
maybe I should end.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chama, for that contribution. I'm really happy that we can see that we are being involved. We are taking care of our own. Beth Mwale has her hand up. Please, you may go ahead and make your comment.
Thank you so much. And I'd like to say thank you to the presenters for the lovely presentation. My comment really is based on the earlier presentation where there's mention of this sense of fear that has developed in us as individuals. I think naturally we have this culture of being outgoing, friendly, we shake hands, we hug, we sit right next to each other. But with this pandemic, we have learned to see each other as, for lack of a better word, somebody who is a possible carrier of the disease. So it's difficult for me to hug someone. It's difficult for me to shake somebody's hand. Now, when we wash hands, we don't wash them to keep clean, but just to remind ourselves, say, well, I might have touched something that somebody else had touched. It could have been contaminated. So my question to the group, to the presenters, is do we see ourselves going back to our earlier state or condition where we freely mingled with each other all? Are we getting into this new culture of fear of each other, fear of the next human being next to me? Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you very much. The question there is this permanent or things are going to change? We have two other participants who have raised their hands, but I think we are likely to be locked out anytime soon because of timing. So this is supposed to be a 30-minute program, but it's like we've already eaten into much of the time. So we are going to share this on Facebook and YouTube. By the way, I think I ought to mention just in case we're logged out. But Jacob, I saw your hand up first. Please, in very few seconds, Jacob Kasambara.
Okay, thank you so much. I'll just talk about the aspect of us interacting with our family members. I think COVID-19 has enabled the majority, especially those who are working. They spend a long time at their workplaces. Now they have more time with working from